Howdy heretics, today I'm gonna tell you the story about how I lost my Jehovah Witness family. Because when you leave a cult like the Jehovah Witnesses, you will most likely lose your family because Jehovah Witnesses believing something that is conditional love. We'll love you as long as you obey Jehovah. That's actually what my parents used to tell me when I was a young child. And if you watch the Watchtower propaganda video like Caleb and Sophia, they will say to the children that Jehovah loves you very much for obeying. It's a conditional love. They're nice people. I don't want to say anything bad about the rank and file witnesses, but the Watchtower religion, that's all about what you can give to Watchtower. And Watchtower is more important than family. When people are within that bubble, they turn kind of toxic. So I'm not doing this video to bash Jehovah Witnesses or my own family members, and especially not my ex-wife. But I know there's a lot of people going through the same thing, so I thought I just might add to their depression and tell them that this happened to a lot of people. So, but like I said, well, typical Jehovah Witness thing to say, I'm imperfect, so there's a billion reasons why my family would leave me, but religion should not be one of them. That's just imaginary thing that happens inside your head. But it's also important for me to state very clearly that when I tell my story and every time I mention my ex-wife, it's not in any way to put her in bad light. She's a wonderful person, but in order to tell the story, tell my story, I will have to mention her more than once, and it's not to put her in a bad light. So I grew up as a Jehovah Witness. I was a very good witness. I was pioneering. I met my first girlfriend, got married to my first girlfriend, no sex before marriage, blah blah blah, all this to keep on pioneering. And it was a lot of to be a Jehovah Witness is kind of fun as long as you do exactly what you're supposed to do and you believe exactly what they tell you to believe when they tell you to believe it. Sometimes they change it and then you have to follow. And as most Jehovah Witnesses, I had a Jehovah shelf. A Jehovah shelf is everything, something doesn't make sense, you just put it on the shelf and say, oh, Jehovah gonna fix that. It's gonna be okay in paradise, or new scrolls will be opened, or trust in Jehovah and not in your own understanding, which is a very stupid thing to say. But you put it in like the Jehovah shelf. And when we were pioneering in Lithuania, my shelf broke. And it's kind of fun. I saw a picture of a kangaroo and my whole world stopped. Because I just realized that everything I believe is stupid. Because Jehovah Witnesses believe that 4,000 years ago, the whole earth was covered with water molecules. And we don't have that many more water molecules. So they say that all the mountains are younger than 4,000 years old. And I had put a lot of stuff on my Jehovah shelf because I've always been interested in geology. And now I saw the picture of the kangaroo and I just realized even if the flood was a real thing and the ark stranded on Mount Ararat, it's Turkey, or there's no way that two kangaroos would skip all the way to Australia. They would stop somewhere before the Himalaya and we would have kangaroos in Kazakhstan, but no kangaroos in Australia. So my whole world stopped and I remember thinking, I wasted my life. And I told my wife, could we take a walk? And we took a walk and she said, what's wrong? You're so quiet. I didn't say anything because I thought religion is wrong. But I don't want to take that away from her or anyone else. So I told her I want to take a break from pioneering, and she had no problem with that. I think she was tired of pioneering. It's a lot of work. It's a fun thing. Jehovah Witnesses, it's a printing company, and they always say to their member, if you're depressed, you should go from door to door and sell more of our literature. And if you're suicidal, you should read our literature. And if you have any problem, you should do something with our literature, probably recruit more recruiters or read it or sell it, something like that. And they always say that if you read our literature, you will be happy. If you sell our literature, you will be happy. If you're tired and you go out from door to door selling our literature, you will be filled with energy. If you've ever been a Jehovah Witness, you know what I'm talking about. And at the conventions, when we were pioneering, and she was healthy, she was very smart and she had a strong mind of her own. So she would walk up to, and this is, you're not supposed to do that when you're a Jehovah Witness, and especially not if you're a female. But she would walk up to the circuit overseer and saying, "Why are you lying? Why are you telling people that you get energized from field service? Don't you understand you just make them depressed? You don't get energized from field service, you get tired from field service." And the circuit overseer would be like, looking at me, "Control your woman." And I didn't do that, I actually was proud that she was had a mind of her own and would speak up. And this happened many conventions in a row. Obviously, I, as her husband, was never appointed as a ministerial servant during this time, because you're supposed to control your wife. But no, it was fun. Anyway, so we stopped pioneering, and I was trying to fade and have a low profile, so I moved to the Russian congregation in Oslo. That's me keeping a low profile, moving to different countries, serving where the need is greater in a foreign language group. So imagine me when I was keeping a high profile. So we were in the Russian congregation, went to the meetings, I didn't do so much field service, I didn't know what to do. But then she got sick, started to get sick. She was obsessed with the lamp. She was working as a nurse in a hospital, and she was obsessed with the lamp. She was dreaming nightmares about the lamp, a lamp that was blinking. The patients push a button when they need help, and then the lamp blinking. So obviously it's a little stress about that, but she was obsessed with that lamp. And then she started seeing double, and then she got blind. And she was diagnosed with MS. MS is a disease. Obviously not anything she chose. It's not her fault in any way. She would deserve so much better from life. But MS is a disease that targets Caucasian women in their 30s mostly. You have really small chances to get it if you're black or Eskimo or Gypsy. But she got it, and it destroys the nerves. So that's why she was blind. She was in the hospital, and I was up here working. I called her and asked how's the hospital, and she said, "Oh, this is the best hospital ever. This is the best hospital ever. As soon as I get healthy, I'm gonna walk in here and get a job as a nurse, because this is the best hospital ever. The nurses are happy, the doctors are happy, the patients are happy, and you don't need to change diapers because everyone can walk by themselves. You just show them to the toilet. This is the best hospital ever. And they're giving me a medicine, it's called blah blah blah, and they read me the side effects, and it said the side effects are depression or euphoria, but I haven't noticed anything." So she was happy in the hospital, and then the sight came back. She lost the sight twice, but there's also a lot of nerves other places in the body that can be destroyed. And we have public health care in Norway, very good system, no reason to complain. And so she was taken good care of. We got a disability monthly check, and I didn't know what to do. And I was very thankful to quote unquote Satan's system that were taking care of us, because we have been pioneering, and Scandinavia is run by social democratic principles. It means that if you have a low income, you pay very low taxes. So this was starting, bugging me, that as a young man I refused to serve my country, even alternative service, and then I spend 10 years all paying next to no taxes, and then we receive all this help from the people that we accused of being Satan's system. So that was bugging me, but I didn't know what to do. And I have ADHD, I have a lot of energy, and I'm running around and she was tired and tired and tired, and she said it felt like her brain was made of lead. So I bought a farm, because then I thought I can spend all my energy with different projects on the farm, and also I can give something back to society, because you're not allowed to do politics, you're not allowed to do almost anything when you're a witness, but taking care of the environment and do things for the ecosystem, that's also important. So I thought I could give, so I thought it was a good idea at the time. I have a farm, and whenever she's feeling good, she can go out in the garden, do stuff that gives you some kind of meaning, and we can go to the meetings. So that's what we did. I thought it was a good idea. And we were been pioneering, both of us, for 10 years, working 1 day a week as window cleaners. So we had saved enough money to buy this farm cash. But then you can imagine how it looked. It was a complete dump. But I'm a construction worker, actually. So I've been fixing and fixing one room after another and building new houses. So it looks kind of, well, it's better now. And yeah, so it kind of worked out. We had a nice time here. But when she got sick, my mother called me and said, I read a lot about this disease, and it says that many men will leave their wife when they get this diagnosis. I'm so proud of you that you will not do that. She didn't ask me. She knew I wouldn't do that. And I too read about the disease, and they said that it gets worse and worse and worse. But I'm an optimist and an idiot, so I just underestimated that. And it also said that it's difficult for a spouse to love the sick spouse after a while, because the sick person will get more and more difficult to be empathic until they just don't have empathy with other people. And that will make it a challenge to love them. And I thought, no, that will never happen to me. So, anyway, no, she loved the farm. And the thing is, with that kind of disease, you cannot go to bed, sleep, and be better the next day, because this, she would call it a lead ball. The head felt like it was lead, and it's the same all the time. But if you do something that gives you pleasure, you feel better. So she would work in the garden, and then she would go to sleep. She would good with flowers and stuff like that. And as long as it was, she used the word lystbetont. I don't know the English word. As soon as you did something that you wanted to do, and you get some pleasure doing it, your body would cope with it, and it would make the nerves work. But she couldn't handle stress. And some days she would be confused, and some days she would be normal. Some days she would not remember anything, and some days she would be normal. Some days, and it's really sad when you. It's like, imagine holding sand in your hand, and it just slips through your fingers, and there's nothing you can do. And that's the situation. And as a spouse, everyone always asks, oh, your wife is sick, how is she doing? People never ask you, your spouse is sick, how are you doing? And that's a lesson for everyone. People actually forget that when someone's sick, the spouse is also suffering. Anyway, it's not about me. She was suffering, but imagine holding sand in your hand, and it's just, you see it just disappearing. Some days she was tired. Well, always she was tired, but some days she was confused. Sometimes she would forget things, and sometimes she would be obsessed with stuff like the lamp in the hospital. I remember once she was convinced for a month that she was working as a lumberjack, and she would actually go to the congregation and cry because she was tired working as a lumberjack, and people in the congregation would call me and yell at me, how can you do this to your wife, forcing her to work as a lumberjack? She wasn't working as a lumberjack. Up until then she never held a chainsaw, but she thought that she was tired. She got more and more depressed. Sometimes she was, actually 2 days she was catatonic. Basically, I had to tell her what to do: sit down, lift your head. And some days she would crawl up and sit like this. And I asked her, "Are you paranoid?" And she said, "Yes, but I have good reasons." She was fun. But she was suffering, and she got more and more anxiety and depression. And that's when it's not a good thing to be in a doomsday cult. Because they were telling her, "Are you depressed? Well, you need to give more to Watchtower. Maybe a few hours extra. Because then you will feel energized and happy." When that didn't work, they told her, "You need to do more." And when that didn't work, they told her she had to give more. And when she couldn't feel the strength, they motivated her like Jehovah Witnesses do. They told her, "Everyone will die in Armageddon, and it's your fault, and God will kill you because you didn't warn them for Armageddon." That's how they encourage people with anxiety. They also say, "Remember that demons are real." And if you have bought something on a flea market, there might be demons in your house that are making you feel bad, and that's the cause. And how can we know if this is true? Well, if you dream nightmares, then we have the answer: there might be demons. Well, obviously you dream nightmares after that. Thank you, elders. And they would just forcing, and then you would see her health go down and go down and go down. And I don't want to say anything negative about her. That's not why I'm telling this story. She's a wonderful person. And obviously, living on a farm with a hyperactive man is difficult for anyone. So I can take my part of that. But the elders did not help. Guilt tripping does not give you energy. And mandatory joy, witnesses have mandatory joy. If you're not happy, God will kill you. And you have to, basically you have to walk around pretending to other people that you're happy. And that adds on to your depression when you're depressed, because you have to use energy to pretend to be something you're not, while not asking for help. And at one point, her health was really bad, and it was visible for other people. And one man called me and said he had some experience with this disease. And he said, "I've seen what the elders are doing to her. They're manipulating her with guilt." And this was a witness in good standing. He said, "They're manipulating her with guilt, forcing her to do more and more and more. And this is just making it her worse. She will just become worse and worse and worse as long as they do this." And obviously that was what was I thought too. And then he said, typical witness thing to say, that so you can't fight with the elders, just allow them to do that, and sooner or later, when she get even worse, they will realize their mistake. They will not apologize, because Watchtower has a principle that the body of elders should never apologize, even if they do something wrong. So this was really difficult for me, because I knew their guilt tripping were making her worse. At that point, I was still going to meetings. I knew the guilt tripping and the shaming were making her worse, and I was supposed to just be standing by so the elder could make her even worse, so they could realize their mistake. That's very counterintuitive for a husband. And I started to be very uncomfortable going to meetings, hearing them telling her. I remember once they told her that you used to be healthy when you were pioneering, but now you're no longer pioneering and sick. So what you need to do is to start pioneering again. So they're window cleaners, and they are trained by Watchtower to give people encouragement by telling them that they deserve to die for not doing enough. It's really sad. And she would go to MR scan every now and then, and she would come home and tell me, her scar tissue in her brain, white spots in her brain, stuff like that. The disease is destroying the nerves. Can you imagine having scar tissue in your brain on random places? She had a really hard time. And then she got worse. But they did not say, "Oh, we're sorry," or anything. They just said she needed to do even more. And obviously they blame me as the husband. I was not taking my spiritual headship serious enough. And I remember, they have this fun thing with having a cult like the Watchtower is they can just come up with their own definitions. So they can, they have a definition. How do you know your husband loves you? Well, he will take the lead in reading Watchtower propaganda for you. He will take the lead in selling Watchtower propaganda to total strangers. And he will take the lead and go to Watchtower propaganda meetings. That's how you know your husband loves you. If your husband doesn't love you, don't worry, Watchtower will love you. It's not... Watchtower believe that a marriage should be something between husband, wife, and Watchtower. They call it the threefold cord. It's not in the Bible. When the Bible talks about the threefold cord, it's not talking about husband, wife, and Jehovah or Watchtower. It talks about friendship, companionship. But witnesses believe it's that the elders are an important part of your marriage. And the elders themselves think so. And being a witness, we always tell one story to outsiders and another story to inside. When we talk to outsiders, everything is wonderful. And no, we are not shunning family members. The elders have no authority. They're just taking the lead spiritually. But in real life, in the congregation, they tell you everything, what to do, what to wear, where to be, what to do. And at this point, it was being more and more obvious to people that she was not getting healthy from giving more to Watchtower. And they started obviously blaming me. And there's a million mistakes I'd done. But I remember I was actually a really good witness. I remember they were shaming me on meetings. Public. I remember they said, "You used to be such a good example, trusting 100% in Jehovah, that Jehovah would take care of you and pay all your bills, and now when your wife is sick, you stopped pioneering and are working 2 jobs." In their head, that's a bad thing. That's a bad husband. In real life, that's something wrong with Jehovah. If he said he would pay my bills and didn't, he's an asshole. Watchtower Jehovah is an asshole. But they thought I was a bad husband for working 2 jobs. And I was considered bad association. And they were doing this over and over every meeting I came to. They were shaming me because they thought shaming me would make me pioneer again. But I didn't believe. I was PMO, physically in, mentally out. I stayed in the cult even though I absolutely didn't believe in it. For 14 years because she wanted to be a Jehovah Witness, and I thought, why not if she wants it? So they were constantly trying to shame me back to being a pioneer, and it didn't work. And I remember one meeting I snapped like polite witness Kingdom Hall snap, but I spoke against the elders and I said, "Yes, that's true. I pioneered for 10 years and Jehovah said he would pay my bills. But when she got sick, she got monthly disability check from Satan's system. The reason why we have a house today and able to live here is mostly thanks to Satan's system, not Jehovah." And I told the elders that in the meeting, and everyone could hear that. And they went ballistic, of course. And they said that Satan's system would never exist. Well, the good part of Satan's system. We have a great social security system in Scandinavia. It's like Bernie Sanders' wet dream. But the witnesses, they believe that they are the backbone of our welfare system, because we are the only honest-hearted people, because Jehovah draw honest-hearted people to the organization, so the people on the outside, they are not honest-hearted, and they only pay taxes if you force them, but we are honest and pay taxes. And they actually said that the social welfare system would never work if it wasn't for Jehovah Witness, because we are the only honest taxpayers in Norway. I beg to differ from a mathematical standpoint. There are 5 million people living in Norway and 12,000 Jehovah Witnesses. Many of them working part-time and paying next to nothing in taxes. But they actually believe that they are the backbone of our social structure. Anyway, from that point it just went downhill, and she got worse and worse, and I started feeling like the unbelieving husband. You know, when you were a witness, they would talk about the unbelieving husband, the terrible person that refused to believe in Jehovah with a loyal, wonderful wife. They started treating me like an unbelieving husband, and that goes both ways. They kind of shunning you, soft shunning, your bad association, or love bombing you. There's nothing in between. So you learn when your brother, Jehovah Witness brother, that if there's an unbelieving spouse, you should contact him and you should pretend to be interested in his hobbies, and then when he tells you everything about his hobbies, you should try to get him to the meeting. So either were they shunning me, or they were coming here and asked for questions about goats for 1 hour, and then they would say, "This is like a paradise, how wonderful you build it, how wonderful all you done, but it's not a real paradise." And I told them, please stop doing that. It's not fun, you know exactly what they're gonna do. Anyway, so they would come and get her, take her out in field service, come home, and they would stop her and eat. She was an excellent cook. You will never hear me say a negative word about her. That's not why I'm making this video, to say anything negative about her. She is a wonderful person, and she would deserve better from life than what she got. Anyway, so they were out in field service, and they would come home, eat food, and the brothers were giving me the stinky eye, say, "So you have been working today." In their mindset, working is something bad. "You have been working today." "We have been in field service." And then they took some extra portions of the food I was paying for, and they didn't say thank you for the petrol I paid for, and then they left. And I can't really be angry with them. I used to be an arrogant piece of shit when I was a Jehovah Witness. Thought I was better than everyone else, so they basically did the same that I used to do. In their mind, they can't understand that they were using my petrol and eating my food while giving me the stinky eye for working. Anyway, this just went worse and worse and worse and worse. And the elders told her that she was not allowed to work in the garden, because they said the work you do on the farm is bringing you down, is stealing your energy. You should not play. We were playing hockey. You should not, you shouldn't play hockey. You shouldn't work in the garden. You should, when you come home, you should just read Watchtower literature and save your energy, so you can go more in field service, because then you will feel better. And if you don't, Jehovah will kill you. And I could see this was just going the wrong way. And they would take her out, and she would come home, and they would say, "Are you happy now?" And she said, "Yes." And they said, do you feel encouraged? And she said, "Yes." "Can you feel the spirit? Do you feel energized?" And he said, "Yes." And as soon as they left, she collapsed on the floor crying. And I had to watch this over and over again. And I showed her, because I still know the Bible, The Bible says, Jehovah loves a cheerful giver. And there's another scripture that says, as long as you're willing to give, Jehovah sees the willingness. And that's acceptable from what you have. not from what you're lacking. And she was crying, and she said, I have to go in field service, otherwise I will die in Armageddon. Back in the day when she had good health, she would always walk up to the circuit of overseer and yell at him and say, why are you lying to people and telling them that field service give you energy? But now, when she was on a very low point in her life with depression and anxiety, she just swallowed it hook, line and sinker and tried to treat her untreatable disease with giving more to Watchtower. It obviously was eating me up alive. She got worse, and I realized I need to do something. So I need to talk to the elders. But at that point they didn't like me anymore. Even though I have a great track record, I was actually one, when I moved out here first time, before I got married, this was isolated territory. So and now there's a congregation here. So this congregation, the three publicers with most seniority in the congregation, not the oldest, with most seniority, I'm one of those three. One guy that came from the territory, and then two pioneers that was part of starting the congregation. So I should have a good track record, but in Watchtower land, you're not worth anything more than your latest report. So anyway, so I had to talk to the elders and try to make them leave her alone. So I read something about psychology, and when you read something about psychology, then all of a sudden you realize that this is not just a religion. This is a destructive cult. And I stumbled about something called a phenomena called the system is perfect, there's something wrong with me. And it said this is a mechanism that destructive religions use all the time. They tell you, if you go to the elders with your masturbation problem and tell them everything, the Holy Spirit will help you overcome it. So that's what I did, and that's what I thought. But I thought, the system works, something wrong with me because I'm immune to the Holy Spirit. Oh, I'm so terrible person, so the Holy Spirit doesn't bother. And you can say, Pentecostals, they are talking in tongues, and they're telling, oh, this is real, the Spirit is here. And they say, well, except me, I'm faking it. Maybe all 100 of them are faking it, and all of them think that the system is perfect, the fault is with me. And I just realized that this is a cult. It's not just a destructive, evil religion, it's a cult. And I went to the elder. Obviously I didn't say that, but I said, I appreciate all you do to try to help her, and I appreciate that sometimes going out in field service can be a good thing for a sick person. Take your mind off your problems and doing something else. And I was stupid enough to say, but so could bowling. Anyway, but I said, what she needs is to relax. She doesn't need to do more field service. She needs to relax. She's sick. She has a real disease, one of the bad ones that eventually will kill her. And she goes to MR scan, and they have scar tissue in her brain, white spots in her brain. It's not a good thing. She's struggling. And I know you're meaning well, taking her out, but could you stop please doing that? And instead show her scriptures that Jehovah will not forget all the good things you've done. She was pioneering. She's been pioneering in foreign field, learn new languages. You can show her the scripture that says that Jehovah loves a cheerful giver. And I remember the elder looking at me, and this is one elder in particular, with pure hatred. And he said, so you have been reading literature that says that the Bible is wrong. I said, no, it's not wrong. This is literature talking about psychology and what mechanism that false religion use to manipulate their congregants. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, we will not do what false religion do. So could you please show her to God's word that says she needs, Jehovah loves a cheerful giver. He was not happy, to say the least. And that's when all hell broke loose. Shortly after that, I remember my parents called and was very sad because I had denounced Christ. And I said, no, I never did that. And this elder, I believe he's a sociopath. But I'm not a doctor, but I believe he had been calling around to the congregation and told people that I denounced Christ. And this was a disfellowshipping offense. Well, if it's a disfellowshipping offense, what the Bible says, if your brother does something wrong, you should talk to him. If he doesn't listen to you, go there with 2 others. And if he doesn't listen to 2, you should go to the congregation. That's what the Bible says. The Jehovah Witnesses don't go to the congregation, they go to the elders. But anyway, if I had denounced Christ, he should first go to me. So I was, at this point, really, really tired. I was working and working and working. You don't get any appreciation from your friends. Actually, they were kind of shunning me. The congregation telling me over and over again that I'm mentally diseased and I'm the root of her problem. She would always tell me that she would prefer that I would stay in the Trondheim all the time. And she didn't say that to hurt me, but that's the way she felt. And you know, it doesn't make me happy to hear it all the time. And sometimes she would be happy and normal, but sometimes she would be not happy. I remember I came home and she was sitting on the floor crying, holding a mobile phone and said, I'm going to call the police and tell them you're hitting me. And I said, I'm not hitting you. They will not believe you. You're going to jail. And she was suffering. It's terrible for her. But you know, it's not a good position for me either. You know, I could go to jail for real. I was not hitting her. It was really, really terrible. And then she left me. And my life was hell because I was so tired. And they had a marking talk behind my back. I went to the meeting, I went to the store, and the witnesses were looking away, pretending they didn't see me. My family did not have any contact with me, siblings, because of the witness idea. If you're having a problem, you're not a real witness. So we step away and let the elders handle it. And I had to work in Trondheim every second week while having responsibility for live animals here. And obviously the elders told me, you know, you should just shoot the animals. They think they have the authority to decide stuff like that. So my life was hell, and you don't get any help from anyone, and I was so tired. And what happened was, a neighbor, a worldly guy, he called me and said, are you going to Trondheim next week? I said yes, and he said, don't worry about the goats, I'll take care of them. So I didn't have to ask him. He came, he fed the goats every day, and he paid for the food. That's real Christian love. The witnesses were shunning me, my own family was shunning me. At that point I had, in pioneering, I've been taking care of a sick wife. The only thing I'd done wrong was standing up for a sick woman that was being bullied by, in particular, one elder of the body. And the elders are imperfect. So there's technically nothing wrong with standing up against the elders. It's just Jehovah Witnesses don't do that. And my life was hell. I was sitting here, me and my dog, feeling so bad. And you know, she was suffering too. It was not a nice situation. And then 4 witnesses contacted me. People that knew the situation very well, that knew her very well. And I remember the first one said, you know, what the elders are saying about you is not true. You're not the cause of her disease. She has actually MS. Thank you. That's what she told me. And then she said, in fact, what is making her feeling bad is the elders. They are constantly guilt-tripping her into more and more field service, while in fact she needs to rest. And she said she believed that she reached a state that she soon will die as a result of the elders harassing her. Imagine that. The sister in the congregation told me that behind the elders' back. And she was a very good friend of my wife's. And then she concluded like witnesses do. She said, so Don't fight with the elders. I'm convinced the problem will solve itself pretty fast because she will die soon. I'm not kidding. That's what my wife's Jehovah Witness friend said behind the elders' back and behind my wife's back. That the elders are killing her, but don't fight with the elders. She will die soon. Then another brother called and he said he had been working a little with MS and knew something about it, and he said, you know what the elders are, he said, what the elders are doing are wrong. They are guilt tripping her. They are making this worse. And I've seen this before when MS takes a turn, and I think she will die within 3 months, he said. Can you imagine how I felt? He said, I think she will die within 3 months. And then he concluded, so don't fight with the elders. Don't question their authority, because the problem will solve itself within 3 months. And then he said something that sounds really weird if you've never been a Jehovah Witness. If you're a Jehovah Witness male, it makes sense. He said, worst case scenario, if she doesn't die and she gets hospitalized for the rest of her life, you don't need to commit fornication to be free to remarry. You just need to find a nice worldly girl that gives you a blowjob, and then you tell the elders, and you will be disfellowshipped for 6 months, and then you can come back, and there are so many single sisters in the congregation. And then I spoke to my parents because they were calling me and I tried to solve the problem. And I told the parents, all the elders were doing, they were hurting her. And you're talking to my father especially, he was like the defense lawyer of society. They cannot put love and organization on the same. So I said, what they're doing is hurting her. Yeah, but that's according to literature. They are making her suffer. Yeah, but that's according to literature. They are causing her pain. Yeah, but that's according to literature. They can't see clearly. They are nice people, but the religion make people toxic. And in the end I was crying and I said, they're killing her. I think she will literally die. And my father and my mother both said the same, yes, but you must obey the elders. And this happened more than once. That my parents said. They would probably refuse and say we never said it, but they also do that about beating their children and 1975 and stuff like that. Witnesses do that. Now, they said I must obey the elders even if she would die as a result of this, because you cannot question the authority. And the funny thing with my parents is that they have no excuse for being naive. If you are a recent convert to any religion, you believe, oh, this is God's one true religion and everything is dandy. But my parents had been in the Jehovah Witness religion for a long time. And as a child, I remember they used to whisper a name about an elder so no one would hear it. But I realized that's a bad guy in the congregation. And when I got older, my father actually told me the stories, and he said that he himself been on the board of elders with this guy, and they had been disfellowshipping innocent people. And every time after they disfellowshipped an innocent person, this sociopath elder in the congregation would put his hand together and say, may Jehovah show them mercy, may Jehovah show them mercy. But little by little they realized that he was a sociopath, and all the people that was disfellowshipped were innocent. My dad's own word. So my father had no excuse for being naive. My mother had no excuse for being naive. And this, what I believe is a sociopath in our congregation, when he accused me of denouncing Christ, he was calling around to people, including my parents. So they knew he was not doing thing right according to Watchtower literature even. But still, when they came to the situation, my wife's health was so bad that onlookers thought she had 3 months less to live due to the guilt tripping from the elders, still all 4 of them said, the problem would solve itself and you can find a new wife. And at that point, I knew I had to fight back. I knew, could you imagine me just standing doing nothing? I knew this is a fight I will not win, but I will fight. And I started a fight with the elders. But fighting, when Jehovah Witnesses face fighting, it's basically disagree with the elders and showing them what the Bible really say. I don't believe in the biblical mythology, but there's a lot of verses here about righteousness and love, and Jesus say a lot of nice things. Nothing about forcing a sick woman that's visibly suffering to do more and do more and do more. So it was really sad. Anyway, she came back and she got stronger medication and she's still alive. So I was wrong and many other people were wrong about the 3-month thing. She needed stronger medication. But she came back and it's weird. At that point I could no longer go to the meetings. I had no problem with her going to the meetings. So, love bombing, they do this, the overwhelming love. They try to do that, so they would come here and say, oh, this is like a paradise. And the whole congregation is going out fishing and having a barbecue this weekend. So everyone that goes to the meeting is allowed to come. And I said, well, I'm not coming to the meeting. And then my wife said, can I go alone to the barbecue? And I thought, I'm not the boss of anyone. So she did that. And in the beginning, this is a kind of cool congregation. That's one of the reasons why I moved up here when I was PMO, because they could actually do stuff like shortening down the meeting on a Sunday because it was nice weather. So they said, well, we have a short meeting and then we go out fishing instead. They would do stuff like that. So as long as you could stay PMO and just pretend you believe in the mythology, then you're okay. But now we will have a party and everyone that goes to meeting is invited. So she was invited to the parties, I was not, and she was going. In the beginning they were love bombing me through her, so she would come back from the meetings and the barbecue, smiling from ear to ear, because they had been spending the whole evening telling her about how wonderful husband she had. And she would come home and tell me the stories. But then after a while they stopped, because the love bombing doesn't work. And then extreme people go to the other extreme. So she would come home from this barbecue crying and tell me what they told about me. And I was a terrible person. Spiritual, abusive, decaying corpse was the one thing they say. So it's kind of sad. And witnesses, you're always told that you should, the best help we get from Jehovah's organization. I remember I told her, can we go to couples counseling? And she said, no, the best couples counseling we get from Jehovah's congregation, and I'm already going to couples counseling. And she meant well. And I said, but is it a good idea to go to couples counseling to the elders when this elder in particular hates me? And go to couples counseling when I'm not allowed to be present? So they have a couples counseling, but I'm not allowed to be present. And she said, and she meant it, and she's a nice person. She said, it's not like you think. We're not saying bad things about you all the time. Actually, I'm defending you. I told them you're not allowed to refer to him as a decaying corpse. That's couple counseling. The best help we get from Jehovah's organization. And it's in the literature. If you don't believe in Jehovah Witness religion, you're a decaying corpse. If you're living with a decaying corpse, you will get a disease. And the same thing it is to talk to someone that strayed away from Jehovah. So that's me. And also she needed to go to psychologist. And this is a social democracy, we have. So go to psychologist if you need it. It's basically for free. But the elders, they always say, for legal reason, we cannot tell you what to do. That's the legal disclaimer. And then they say, but we can warn you from the consequences and remind you that demons are real. And if you open your mind to a psychologist, the demons might come in. That's what they actually tell people that have anxiety. With a legal disclaimer that we cannot tell you what to do. However, demons are real. It's terrible. In the end, we went to a psychiatrist, and I felt so bad because I knew that they would be questioning her afterward. I just knew. Felt like I was paranoid. If I would tell anyone, people would shake their head and say, no, you're just being paranoid. I knew they would question her. So we went to a psychiatrist and we sat down and I said, we are the happiest people on earth. We are Jehovah Witnesses and we get this help from the congregation and the elders are wonderful. And I did most of the talking about how Watchtower is wonderful. And then we went out from the psychiatrist. She gave me a hug and she went out to the parking lot, and guess who was waiting in the parking lot to get a 45-minute review on a 45-minute meeting with the psychiatrist? Brother Loving Shepherd, the sociopath. Obviously he need to know exactly what was said at the psych. I'm not doing this video for rank and file to say anything negative about rank and file witnesses. They are nice. But the structure of Jehovah Witness organization makes nice people toxic. And like I said, I don't want to say anything negative about her. She is and always been a very nice person. She's sick and she was struggling, and I would say that she was constantly listening to the wrong advice. Anyway, so then she left me again and she said, I love you, but I love them more. Referring to the elders actually, or the congregation. She was kind of honest that way. Most witnesses, they do a kind of dishonest thing. When they talk about Watchtower, they use the word Jehovah. It sounds better. So I'm giving money to Jehovah. It's not Jehovah. He doesn't have a birth certificate. He doesn't have a bank account. You're giving money to Watchtower. But she was kind of honest. It's a good quality. She said, I love you, but I love them more. And that was actually a nice thing to say because she gave me closure, because after that she called me several times and wanted to come back, and I just said, do you love me more than them? Because that's excuse me, but that's the minimum requirement. You have to love me more than Watchtower. And she called many times and she was crying and she wanted to come back, and she could have lied and said, yes, I love you more than Watchtower. So I think it speaks volumes of her good qualities that she didn't lie. So she left me, and then she started shunning me. So it's weird, but I got closure, I thought. But then now I found out that she was, well, first she called me and said she had been with a man, but she was not disfellowshipped because the elders asked her how many people know about this, and no one knew about it. And then you don't get disfellowship, because unrighteousness is only unrighteous if it damaged the Watchtower brand. That's one of the things that normal rank and file witnesses don't know. You will only get disfellowshipped if it's publicly known. One of the first things the elders ask, how many people know about this? And that's one of the reasons why pedophiles have a nice place to stay, because they don't do things in public. While some witnesses, they smoke a cigarette and they tell everyone how sorry they are, and then they tell the elders and get kicked out for smoking a cigarette. While the pedophile, they never tell anyone. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to mention her in the same sense as a pedophile. But anyway, she told me she'd been with a man, but she wasn't kicked out because no one knew about it. And she told me. It was nice. But then I heard she was disfellowshipped because she married a man. She married an unbaptized publisher. And obviously she left me so she can do whatever she wants. But she was disfellowshipped because according to Watchtower's rules, she's still married to me. And this is where I get angry at the Watchtower, not at her. Because she converted to be a Jehovah Witness when she was 14. And she gave everything to the Watchtower religion. She sacrificed everything. Very unselfish person. She sacrificed everything for Watchtower. And then she meets a guy and marry him. And she was disfellowshipped. So they had a meeting with her and asked her, can you prove that your husband, the apostate, has done something sexual? How is that a nice way to treat her, Watchtower? Huh? According to your rules, she's not allowed to speak with me. And you call her in to question her, and you assume her guilt. Normally in a court, you assume that the defendant is not guilty, and the court has to provide the evidence that you're guilty. In this case, they invite her. In the reality, if someone gets married, it's a joyous occasion. In Watchtower, it's a potential crime, and she does not get the benefit of the doubt. They say, can you prove that you're innocent? But you're not allowed to speak to your husband, because your ex-husband, me, because I'm an apostate. So she's not allowed to talk to me, but she needs information about my whereabouts. And remember, in Watchtower religion, being disfellowshipped is a capital punishment. They believe that Jesus will come and lovingly kill everyone that's disfellowshipped. So imagine if we were sitting in court and it's a murder trial. And we just start out with saying, well, we assume you're guilty. Can you prove otherwise? We wouldn't do that. And what if he said, well, could you make a phone call and check my alibi? What would we do? Well, we would make a phone call. I know for a fact that even the Gestapo would do that. Those elders are allowed to talk to me. Those elders, those 3 elders, sitting in judgment of a sister that gave everything for Watchtower, they could have picked up the phone and called me and said, hello, do you remember us? We are in the process of micromanaging your ex-wife's genitals, and we would like some information about your genitals. Maybe I would have said that this is a 100% appropriate question. I will give you all the information you need. Maybe I would have said that. They don't know because they never tried. They could just picked up the phone and called me. And according to their stupid religion, saved her life in Armageddon. They did not pick up the phone and call me. Huh? Secondly, there's 2 ways this meeting go down. The first way is that they say, you're accused of being married without being free to remarry. And because according to our file, your apostate husband has not committed adultery. Yeah? So if they have a file about me, that's illegal. If the elders are having a meeting with my ex-wife talking about my sexual activity now as an apostate, that's a crime. They have no right to have a file about my sexual activity. GDPR. So the other thing that would have been, if they say, you're accused of entering adulterous marriage, is what they call it. And since we are Jehovah's loving, law-abiding organization, we don't have a file. So please tell us everything you know about your husband's sexual activities while we are taking notes. That's the other alternative. So in both cases, they're taking notes about both cases, I don't know which one they did. Probably they have an illegal file, or they are taking note and creating an illegal file. In both cases, those 3 judges convicting her to death in Armageddon are criminals according to Norwegian law. And they themselves cannot pick up the phone and ask me if I think she would be deserved to be executed by Jesus. This is not a loving organization. She would deserve so much better in life. You know, there's a billion reasons why she could leave me. That's not the point. I'm not a perfect person. She would deserve a better husband, a better health, and a better cult. She left me because of religion, and I was hoping they could be happy together, and they kicked her out. Why? Because they are so lazy, so they cannot take a phone call to me. They would prefer to execute their sister in Armageddon. So, when my wife got sick first, my mother called me and said, I read that many people will leave their wife when they get this disease. I'm so proud of you that you will never do that. And today, my mother is shunning me for standing up to those asshole elders. And if my mother is watching this, please keep shunning me, because I deserve better. Jehovah Witnesses are nice people, but this organization makes them toxic, and I, for one, have a better life without them. I don't think my mother will watch this, but I know my siblings will watch this. And I can tell them, they haven't had any contact with me. I went through hell, and she went through hell. They didn't call me for years. So, your Christian love and your shunning is the same thing. So, thank you very much. So, I didn't do this video to say anything negative about my wife, ex-wife, obviously. I wish her all the good, and she would deserve so much better in life. And, well, if she watched this, I can apologize for all my mistakes, obviously. But the way they are treating her as a number, if I would, and I've been in all corners of this organization, and I love the people still, but if I would leave you with a scripture to describe the Jehovah Witness religion, it would be this. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to accurate knowledge. For because of not knowing the righteousness of God, but seeking to establish their own, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of God. Watchtower have created their own way of righteousness, because they don't understand the righteousness of God. And that's why they end up in situations like this. So, if you're a rank and file Jehovah Witness, you don't know what I'm talking about, because the elders' book is secret. They don't get to know it. But if you served as an elder, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're currently serving as an elder, I want you to ask you one question. How can you support a judicial system that makes the Gestapo look good? Because the Gestapo, in this situation, they would have taken a telephone call to me and just checked their facts before they killed someone or sentenced someone to death in Armageddon. The Gestapo tried to run a fact-based organization, while the Watchtower gladly, like they say it, leave someone to Satan so Jesus can kill my ex-wife in Armageddon. How can you support a system that makes the Gestapo look like a loving organization? So, this was not a happy video, but I know there's a lot of PIMOs out there struggling, going through the same, leaving this organization, and I can tell you, It's so much better on the outside, not having to deal with all these crazy people, because the religion makes them toxic. And if there's something we can learn from this, don't do the same mistake as I did. I thought, when I woke up, I thought I don't have the right to wake up family members. That was stupid on me. I should have woken her up while she still was healthy. So do it little by little. Secondly, I think it's important to seek help with marriage counsel and psychiatrist and all these things, because even when you stop believing, you have this crazy idea that let's read the Bible, let's read the Watchtower, let's go to the elders, because there's a mental block. So try to get rid of that mental block as fast as possible and seek professional help. And if you're still not conceived, try to find parents that are not Jehovah Witnesses, and preferably people living in a country with universal health care. We have a great system in Norway, and I'm very thankful for all the help we got. And if you're an activist like myself, try to help the PMOs. They are going through hell. So it's kind of fun to make fun of the ridiculous teaching of Watchtower. But when we're protesting outside a convention, there's a lot of people suffering there. And it's difficult, but we can try to show them some help and support when we're protesting, so they don't feel that they're attacked from both sides. I think that's important. And the last thing is that I learned, if someone tells them that their spouse is sick, I always ask, how are you doing? Because people forget that when someone's sick, the spouse is also suffering. So, well, at least we'll learn something. So, see you in paradise.